YouTube, what is good? Welcome to episode 2 of Critiquing Your Street Photography. If you missed episode 1, I will link it in the description on this video. But what we're doing right now is y'all are sending me your street photography and I am going through it and critiquing it. And in episode 1, I did about 3 to 5 minutes on everyone's set of photos. But because y'all sent me so many on Twitter, it's crazy how many sets of photos y'all sent. It's like over 330 or something now. So today I'm going to switch it up a little bit and do more of a rapid fire style. Instead of going through every photo y'all sent, I'm going to pick one from the set and I'm going to only spend like 1 or 2 minutes just to make sure more people can get in the video and I can share more photos as well. And because there are so many submissions and we're still in the social distancing season of life right now, I'm probably going to do an episode 3 in like a week or 2 weeks. If you have no idea what I'm talking about, you're like, how do I submit photos? You can go to my Twitter at Ranft and get your photo submissions in there. So let's get into it. So our first set of photos is from Austin right here. Remember, I'm only picking one photo from each set so I can speed up the video. This image right here is crazy. This thing's looking solid. We have some lead lines. We have some beautiful light right at the end of the photo where our figure is crossing into the frame. It really highlights and draws your eye into the subject. My only critique on this photo would be to have something more happening in the sky. The sky is a little bland, being just kind of like a blown out highlight. It would be nice to have something there, maybe some clouds, maybe just like, I don't know, anything really. Anything there would help out the photo, but this is really solid. It looks awesome. Next set is by Telly Pakatu. I'm sorry, I probably said your name wrong right there. This photo right here, the colors on this are ridiculous. So we got this like red tunnel with all these fluorescent lights. We have 2 people walking up the frame, but we got our hidden subject right between the 2 people. Y'all have heard me talk about this before with street photography. I like to look for triangles, and this has it. You have 2 people and then 1 person there to create this like triangle in your scene. Now, one thing going on here, there's a lot of negative space in the top of the image. I would probably crop this to like a 16:9 and get rid of those top 2 sets of light. It would really tighten up your composition, and all that sky up there, it's not really, or you know what I mean, not sky, like all that extra tunnel isn't necessary to the photo. I'd crop it in a little bit, tighten up your composition, fill your frame, and you're solid on this one. But that photo looks sick right there. Real quick, before we get into the rest of these, I want to thank our sponsor today, Squarespace. You can head over to squarespace.com/EvanRanft to start a free trial today, or you can use code EvanRanft to get 10% off your first purchase. For me, let me tell you, Squarespace is the most valuable sponsor on this channel for me because of what they've done for my business. Ever since I built my Squarespace site a few years ago, everything has changed for me. I was able to do $30,000 in revenue from that site last year, and I actually posted a video earlier this year where I explain exactly how I built the site, how I did that. So if you're interested in that, you can go watch the video. I'll link it in the description on this one. But for me, the thing that makes Squarespace so valuable is that it's a minimal investment that can bring you a maximum return. My site is a prime example of this. I used a basic template that comes with Squarespace, built the site in one day, and it only cost me a couple $100. That much of a return on such a small investment is almost unheard of, and it's one of the easiest things that you can do to grow your business. And right now, because I'm at home and I'm not working with clients, I'm putting a lot of effort into building even more revenue streams to increase that return from my site. You'll know a lot about some cool stuff coming to my site in the next few weeks. So if you've been thinking about building a website and you want to get started, head over to squarespace.com/EvanRanft to start your free trial today, or use code EvanRanft and you can get 10% off whenever you sign up and purchase your final site. Thank you, Squarespace, for sponsoring today's video. Let's get back to these photo submissions. So next up, we have Robert Shaw. He sent in 4 photos. The one we are going over is this classic looking black and white photo with some people in a window here. It looks like a cafe. I really like this. Your frame is filled, you have a reflection where you can clearly see the subject and what you're looking at, but also the background of the reflection is really nice as well, creating this very dynamic, interesting scene. This has that classic street photography feel. My one critique would be to take a shutter step or a stutter step, whatever you want to call it, to the left to get yourself out of the frame a little bit. Being able to see you in there, it's not a big deal, but it removes the magic a little bit if you're going for like a street scene here, especially because your legs intersect with the person's back as they're leaning forward. So maybe even just getting yourself a little farther to where you're not cutting into the subject. That would be my critique on this one. Next up, we have a set of photos from Daniel. This shot, really cool right here with these lead lines. We have our figure crossing the street. Love the haziness, love the nostalgic feel to this photo. My one critique, I would punch in on this a little bit. So you have these 2 lights in the top left and right of the photo, and I realized why you put those there. You were trying to kind of balance the scene out, but they're unnecessary. I think the shot would look a lot better if you just punched in past those. Your eye will go straight to this subject. It will be a lot closer, and you don't have to worry about those lead lines being uneven. I actually think it adds to the real lifeness of this photo. So just punch in a little bit, fill your frame up with the things that matter, and you're on point. That photo is sick. Next is Robert right here. This photo of New York. Let's see here. What could we do to this? It's cool. I love these taxi photos. I like the reflection here. What I would do here is the same as the last photo. I would punch in a little bit more. So the key point of this image is the taxi, it's the Times Square background, and it's the reflection on the taxi and the colors and everything. The left and right side of your image, they're not really adding much to the scene or the story of the photo in general. It's kind of just some people walking, some cars. So I think if you punched in a little bit on this, you'd fill the frame more with things that matter, and it would create a little bit more of interest in the photo. But not bad here. Really like the colors on this one, and you can't go wrong with a classic New York taxi photo. Taxi, my goodness, this is this is off to a good start. We got a set from Patrick right here. It looks like Toronto right here. Yo, composition on this, lines on this, colors, crispiness. This thing is solid. I love the framing of the CN Tower. You got your backdrop on point right here. It's not blown out or anything. All the layers to this photo are crazy on point. One thing that you could possibly add is maybe someone on the platform. I see the point of this was to get more of an isolation feel for sure, but I mean, maybe one more element on this could just take it even that far over the top, but the composition's ridiculous here. Really good. Love the way you filled up the frame. I just think maybe something in the foreground could be the only thing to add to this, but not a bad symmetry photo for sure. Like the fact that you framed it in the top, I really like, because if you took it one step forward, it would be a much more boring composition. So solid work right there. We got Mike sending in 4 photos. Photo right here is of this devil dog neon sign pointing at this shadowy figure going through our frame. Really like the setup on this. It's a clever setup with, this dark, moody photo. You have the arrow pointing directly at your subject right here. I think on this one thing you could do is create less space between the sign and the person, and the way you achieve that is getting a lower angle. So you can get down a little bit lower and get that shadowy figure to where their head is much closer to the arrow. Maybe you get a little closer as well. I understand it's a much more challenging composition because you have to squat like a weirdo and wait for someone to enter the frame. But if you did that, the arrow would be that much closer to the subject, really directing your eye right to them. But I like the idea of this. I see what you were going for, and it was executed really well. The critique would be maybe try to get everything a little bit tighter inside the frame. Next, we have a set from John right here. 2 photos. So this thing right here, crispy clean lines. Everything looks great. My critique on this would have to be that, wow, I just sounded like a goat right there. So stupid. My critique on this would be to have more happening inside the frame. So you have this setup that's perfectly positioning your eye in this square. It's saying, hey, look at the square. It's right here. Everything is framed for you so perfect. And all you have is just one person walking through there. Not to say it's bad, it's much better than the scene being empty, but imagine if you did this exact same scene and it was a really rainy day and you waited for an hour and you happened to catch a bundle of people with umbrellas or in rain jackets or colorful clothing or something all bunched into that center square. It would just add a little bit more to the image. Not saying it's bad whatsoever. This is very well executed. I'm just saying you possibly could have had more happening inside of it to create a more interesting photo. Even if it's just one person and they're wearing a yellow or orange jacket to fit the color scheme of the photo, that would enhancify. I'm losing it today. That would intensify the photo that much more. Next, we have a set from Mighty I can't read. Okay. We have a portrait right here. This thing is crazy. This looks like some type of futuristic album cover. It looks like you might have used a CD or something to create the lead line effect. The execution on this, solid. I like how if you hadn't used the CD or your phone or reflective item, that side of the frame would be bare and it wouldn't look good. So we have some nice lead lines, very digital, very futuristic looking. My only critique would be that the side of his face next to the sign, it's a little bit hot, meaning that the highlights are a little high. You might have been able to bring them down a little bit, but not too big of a deal. Not saying it's a bad thing. They just look like a little bit too much, if you see what I'm saying. And one thing you possibly could have done here is you could have reversed the crop. I understand this is most likely cropped for Instagram, but if you did a landscape crop here, I think you would remove some negative space above the subject, which isn't necessarily needed for anything in the photo. But this one's solid as well. Y'all are killing the game today. These all look ridiculous. So Kiram sent in a set of photos. I mean, hey, look at this, lines for days right here. I really like the gradient style of this. It's very understated. You might not catch it at first, but the fact that it goes from white at the top to gray to darks is really nice. And then obviously you have your one subject isolated right there in the photo. Subtle, but pretty much perfect. This is a clever, awesome street photo right here. I like the kind of interaction between a person and their environment. One thing I might do, I can't tell like what's in the backdrop here. There's like a few little random items. I don't know if you're a Photoshop person or not. You could go in and remove those items to the right of the subject here to kind of like clean it up a little bit more, or you could go in and post and darken up their shirt so they pop a little bit more. But as for just a straight up photo out of camera, on point here, solid. Sam sent in the next set of photos and we got this. Is that, I don't know if it's New York. I'm pretty sure it's New York, but we got this photo of an intersection with all these people crossing right here. This is really cool. It has a classic New York feel. And on this one, I don't necessarily mind the fact that the sky is blown out because it creates this kind of hazy, dreamy feel. My critique would be I think that's like a Cadillac or something, the black car in this frame that's blocking a lot of our frame. I think it's a little too far into the photo, meaning it's just taking up too much of the foreground. I know what you were going for. You were trying to frame up this scene and have the people between the cars. I think this photo needed to be made maybe a split second before it was made because that black car, it's just taking up a little bit too much space in the image, too much real estate, and it's a little bit distracting. It's taking away from what you want people to focus on, which is like the busy city feel happening behind it. Next up, a set from Jothany. So he's like posted up on this pole, smoking a cigarette, but you captured it at the perfect moment where he kind of looks like he's like sneaking on somebody. You know what I mean? He's hanging out. My critique on this would be too much space at the top of the photo. There's too much negative space here. That pole extending into the top of the frame, all it does is like lead your eye up, and then you wonder why. It takes away from the subject and what you're needing to look at. So one thing you could do is just crop this down. You're good to go. But I understand you might want like that portrait style crop. So I don't know. I would have cropped this landscape though, but that's just me. Solid capture right there. I really like photos like that you look at and you're like, what's happening here? Like, that's one of my favorite things about street photography is it allows you to create your own narrative in your head of what's happening in the scene. So next up, we have a submission from Noah. His photo is of this red wall with this insane light coming in. It's like chaotic light with all these pillars right here. There's so many lines happening in here. The colors are really nice. My critique is your subject, the person you put in the photo, is kind of getting lost inside of this scene. One thing you could do is try to get rid of some of the negative space here. We have a lot of negative space in the top and bottom of the image that doesn't necessarily need to be there. It's not doing anything for the photo. It's not really setting the scene here. And also the way the pillars are positioned, they're kind of creating a line towards the subject, kind of not. So what I would think I would do here is probably punch in a lot and create a composition kind of like that. Can you see that here? Maybe something like that, just because now you have your subject, you still have these pillars, you still have the light, but you don't have any of the other distractions that are coming from the outside scene. I think the main thing here is these pillars and the light, so that's all you really need. Next up is from David. Crazy set of photos from Snow Day right here. These things are like ridiculous. So good. I've got to assume this might be Toronto or something like that. We got this photo of, it looks like a bus train station or like a train stop, streetcar stop, something like that. Spot on composition right here. What I would try to do different is get rid of some of the negative space at the top of the photo. We have this like hotel sign or something up top that's completely unnecessary to the shot. You could get rid of that and not lose any of the effect of the image. Also right here, our subject, they're kind of getting lost in the scene just slightly because of where they're positioned between these walls and the door. You see how the subject has a red line crossing through their head. What I would do is take a slight shift step this way so that the subject is positioned between those two red lines as opposed to having the red line cut through them. That's a very nitpick critique, but I think visually it would allow your eye to pinpoint the subject a little bit more because it would create more definition around them. But I mean, this thing is spot on, absolutely ridiculous. So many layers, so many things happening here. I mean, like even the fact that the ground has the lines on it from stuff driving through, this is spot on, really solid photography work. Cameron sent in a set of photos and we have this awesome classic like internet moody feeling, I think bus station thing right here. So this, we have solid lead lines. We have like this Tron feel, cool lighting, cool color. Everything is on point. The one thing I would change, you have an entire side of the image that is completely unnecessary to the photo. It's just emptiness. And I can understand the idea of setting this as like a minimalism type thing, but here it doesn't really do anything other than distract you from the subject that you're trying to look at, which is this person inside the lead lines. So what you could do here is just punch in a little bit. Once again, fill up your frame so that the subject lead lines and the feel of this whole thing is what you're looking at, and then the negative space is gone. That seems to be like a common theme today, is this lack of filling the frame. And I never talk about rule of thirds because it's not something that I like keep in my head a lot, but rule of thirds is pretty much essential to all photo compositions. You want every piece of the photo to be filled with something relevant to the scene. And if a big piece of the rule of thirds is taken up by something like just some black sky or this single solitary light or something like that, it doesn't have to be in the photo. You can figure out a way to crop and create something different. So coming up next is a set of photos from Max. He says these are from France and Quebec. We got this straight up movie scene feeling photo right here from a high vantage point showing all the rooftops, all the housetops, whatever you want to call them, and then a solitary window with someone in the window silhouetted. I mean, come on now. This is awesome right here. This composition is really balanced. The color isn't over the top. I mean, I don't got anything negative to say on this one. Pretty much solid. Like nothing to say here. This is great. Next up, we have a set of photos from Mateu. We have this photo of someone biking through this scene and they're framed by this really cool sculpture. This composition is awesome. Really like that you found this here. I like the buildings in the back creating lead lines. You have your subject positioned nicely in the middle. The only thing I'd change is bring the subject up so they are creating a shadow on the ground as well. Y'all have heard me talk about the rule of threes in street photos. If you can have three of anything, that's always going to be better than having two or having one. So in this case, our subject is kind of getting lost in the scene a little bit. If they're pulled up into the sun and creating a shadow on the ground, now we have three shadows on the ground. So your brain is going to create that connection point between them. And also if they're out in the sun, the subject is just going to pop and stand out a little bit more. Right now, they're slightly lost in the shadow in the back of the scene, but this is a great find for the composition and it still looks really good. Love the color on this. I would just bring that subject up if you can. Next, we have some shots from Ireland. These are from Terry. Yo, Stranger Things vibes right here. Like the exposure on this, like the tunnel here. I like the fact that this person, like you captured them in a pose where they're very like alien-like or something. One thing I would change here probably would be to fill the frame once again a little bit more. I think this shot could benefit from a slight crop, maybe something more happening on the walls or just something else happening in general inside the scene. You're on the right track with the vibe here. It's just that I think something more could be happening in the photo to kind of get your imagination going. But spot on with the execution of this, the composition, the color, everything like that. Just maybe a more interesting subject. Like think of the priest in The Exorcist. You know what I'm talking about? If that guy walked in this tunnel, that would be sick. But definitely not bad here. That's my critique on that one. Next is a set from Florian. Yo, I gotta show two of these right here because, I mean, this, like, what, where do you find this? This is so ridiculous of a composition. I don't know if this is a graphic or if it's like an actual sculpture or what it is. Spot on right here. Put the subject in a nice spot. The lines are crazy. It's just a great find. It's a fun photo. But this second one, this is what I was talking about a while back, where when you get this composition where everything's pointing you towards the middle, isolating everything in the middle. This is done perfect. It has our three people, rule of threes, right there in the center. Your eye is going right to it. It's composed perfect. I don't really have a critique on this one. It's spot on. It has everything that you would want in a photo like this. I guess the only nitpick that I could have here is maybe having our subject have some type of color that's complementary to the scene. Maybe have waited for someone in like a bright yellow jacket or something. Maybe having more separation between the people inside the scene so you can really see the three and it will add to that symmetry look. But that's like super, super picky, critique of this. Next up is a photo from AZ. Okay, this thing is really, really cool. It's of this like glass and these people going through. My critique on this one, try to get three in there. Try to get a third element, something else to have your brain start working. What is this person grabbing towards? Is there something else in the frame? Could we put something else there? Could there be a third person? Just maybe one more thing going on here to really get your imagination going. I like it a lot. Love the pink color here, and I love the capture. I don't know how you did this or like what these people were doing, but nice find for sure. So Concrete Soldier sent in a set right here. Love the minimalness on this. We have just like a black sidewalk, this giant white wall. See, this is an example of the opposite of what I've been talking about. This photo, it's scaled enough to where filling the frame isn't necessary. Like the point of the photo is the fact that there's only one minor thing happening inside of it because there's nothing else going on. But my critique would be the thing that's going on inside this minimal composition is not necessarily interesting enough. Yes, it's two people. Yes, it's cool and all, but I think you could have gone more minimal and more interesting at the same time by maybe waiting for a different subject to cross into the frame. Don't know what that necessarily is. I just think, for what this is, there could have been something a little bit more interesting happening here, but definitely not a bad photo, not a bad find either. Love the contrast between the black and white, and this is an example, like I said, of the opposite of everything I've been talking about today, minimalism and a really wide frame done right. We have a photo set from Thomas right here. This is more of a portrait here. What I would do on this one, everything is spot on, looks great, punch in a little bit. The focus here is her face. It's not the backdrop. It's nothing like that. You could punch into right there and fill your frame up once again, but we have a lot of stuff out here that doesn't matter. All this tarp up top doesn't matter. All this tarp down in the bottom doesn't matter. So fill up your frame once again. Maybe take a little bit of her leg out as well because her leg is not necessary to the photo either. Get the focus to what you want to focus on, which is the model's face. But this is a very well done black and white, tack sharp right here. It looks like their face is perfectly in focus. Looks like you followed the rule of focusing on their eyeball. So next up, we have a set of photos from Justin right here. I like how he sent these in where they're all like collaged together, I guess would be the best way to put it. I'm only going to talk about the bottom one right here because there's a lot of potential. I would just change one thing about it, and that is the way you compose the scene. So right now you have this pole in the middle of the scene with the light on it. I guess it's like called a light pole. Come on, Evan. You have the light pole right here, just splitting your scene down the middle. Now, nothing wrong with that light pole, but what I would do is try to position it more onto one side of the photo. So all you got to do here is move your camera like just a little bit like this and take one step backwards. What you're going to do is you're going to create more of a scene on the right side of the photo, and you're going to keep these lead lines and all these light poles down here, still keeping that corner look. Tighten it up there, move the light pole over this way, and get more of the scene over here. Your composition is balanced and perfect. But as far as this scene goes, I really like it. I like the market and the flowers and everything. You just split it down the middle with the pole, and that's such an easy fix. The scene is awesome here, though. Like, so much potential, and you could probably go back and redo this pretty easily. So that'd be my critique. Step back, move a little bit, tighten everything up, and get that pole more towards the side of the photo if possible. Our last one is from Essence right here. She's in Atlanta. She does awesome portraits. Go check her out. She said she's been dabbling in street photography, so we're going to give it a shot. This photo is some people on the bus right here. We got some nice light. My only critique here would be kind of the same as the last one. All you got to do is reposition yourself a little bit to put your subjects in a better spot. We have 3 subjects here. I really like that. Just one of them is getting lost inside the bus like panel. You can tell that there's a person there, but they're not standing out enough. By moving the camera just a little bit this way, you are going to be in a position now where they're silhouetted. You can really tell that there's a subject there, and you're probably still going to get that really nice light. So that's it on that one. That is everyone's photos today. That is it for episode 2, rapid fire critique. Remember, if you want more like in-depth, a slowed down version of this video, you can check out episode 1. I'll link it in the description like I said earlier. If you enjoyed it, hit that thumbs up button, subscribe if you are not yet, and stay tuned for part 3 of this series. And who knows, if people watch this one and people watch episode 3, we could do an episode 4 eventually as well. Thank you guys so much for watching. I will see y'all next time.